Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you guys are when you watch this podcast. This is Tony. I'm here with Zack Zeidman, one of our ambassadors. And yeah, Zack, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. I've been working out in the industry for about 11 years now. I hail from Chicago. I sort of it was kind of a normal sort of a normal path. I went to film school. I went to Columbia College Chicago. Got my bachelor's there, and then I came out and did a semester in LA program, and then interned at a couple different places, Raleigh Studios, Panavision. Raleigh Studios was set lighting, so I worked with Hollywood Rentals when they were actually a thing still. And and then I proceeded to work at EVS, Camera Rental House, and then decided to give a try at working freelance. And so I worked as an assistant cameraman for several years, and then switched over to lighting, and then worked my way up as a gaffer, and then now as a DP. So kind of I guess the traditional route just took a long time.
You went like the super
I went
traditional
the
route.
full route. Yeah, I went the full route. So I PA'd on my step uncle was an actor out here, and he did a documentary series that I think HBO picked up last year. Finally, after like years of pitching it, they finally picked it up, and that was my first real experience. It was multicam, and it was we were out in Santa Barbara, and so I came out right after. It was like my right before my final year at Columbia, and I came out and did that. And then for that, the production coordinator really liked me, and he brought me on to the Emmys in the fall. And so I worked the Emmys. I flew out here and did that, and then and so yeah, so I was working crew. So then yeah, and then when I came out here, I did mostly worked in camera and lighting. So it was uh, that I was always known as a crew guy. So it was really hard to kind of break that mold and become a shooter, because it's just like once you're kind of known as something, then it takes a lot of uh, tenacity to kind of get out of that sort of
Like the
rhythm.
mold.
Yeah. So I just started saying I'm a shooter, and just started taking on projects, I
You need
guess.
the experience so that you could,
Yeah.
decide on the shots that make sense for the crew to assemble, right? It's not like you can just jump into it
Yeah.
like, oh, just create this miracle for me so I can shoot it, and then the crew
Exactly.
have to figure it out.
And when we came up, it was when YouTube was starting and all that stuff. So it was like post writer's strike, and we were, rates were really low, and everyone was just kind of hustling. So it's like, so if you didn't own like a Red or a DSLR, it was like, all right, good luck trying to shoot. So everyone had to kind of crew to
Hmm.
kind of make ends meet for a little while. And the few guys that like got in there and like started shooting like the Funny or Die project, started shooting, College Humor, whatever, those guys really, got lucky, got in at the right time, and, were able to continually make it work. But yeah, for the rest of us, it was kind of like, all right, well, we got a crew for the first couple of years, and then just like, hopefully we've met enough people and can just like kind of dig into it.
Yeah. So when you were gaffing on projects, like what are some of the projects that you worked on in towards like where you'd consider like your mid-level skills were at before you pretty much became like a gaffer?
Well, I did gaff a lot of Funny or Die, and for BuzzFeed too. I did BuzzFeed.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
nice. Tasty Nifty videos. I did Funny or Die's whole series with them for a couple years. That's kind of what really pushed me over into gaffing full time. So it was like just kind of because they were just consistent jobs and everything like that.
How did you usually run like a setup for a like Funny or Die or BuzzFeed type shoot? Like what type of lights
Um,
were your go-tos and like the arrangements and stuff?
Yeah. Well, for that, it was kind of what they had. So it was, they were a little bit behind the times. So it's like I'd go on commercials or, be on features, jumping, being on those. And, we'd be able to go to all the rental houses and stuff like that, uh, and with them, it was like they were like stuck like 5 years in the past. So we were using
Whoa.
kinos, we were using airy tungsten units. I don't even think we had started. They didn't even want to start transitioning into quasars or any type of LEDs, sky panels, or anything. It wasn't until like maybe one of the last shoots I did for them. They finally transitioned into more modern stuff. Um, occasionally we get an HMI in there, a couple HMIs in there, something like that, really spruce it up. But it was very bare bones lighting. I tried to make it as unique as possible, and I think that's why I was hired back so much.
Like coming from school and going into like gaffing for that, like did that become an issue with the equipment that they had, or were you really familiar with that stuff from when you went to school or your previous work?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Columbia was a very cinematography driven school. I don't know if you've talked to anyone from there, but they really focus on cinematography. So, I mean, we were working with 35 millimeter, we were working 16 millimeter, we were working, I was, because it was when I was there, it was like right before they transitioned into digital. So we caught the tail end of what the previous industry was. So because of that, kinos were very popular, and HMIs and tungsten units. So that's what I learned and trained up on, was all that stuff. So it was very familiar. It was a little disheartening because hear everyone else on on all the regular shoots was
Regular.
yeah, regular, yeah, normal shoots where we're using all these cool new toys and everything like that. And there's such a slew of LED lines that were coming along. Even film gear lighting, yeah, the stuff that was coming out with light gear. And it was, I was kind of like, I want to work with this stuff. So when I transitioned out, I made it a point to to try and work with that gear.
At what point were you able to finally get on sets that actually started having the new toys to mess with?
Well, I was, one of the first shoots I ever was on when I was out here as an electrician was
Mhm.
I worked on Janusz Kaminski. Janusz Kaminski directed project, and it still hasn't come out. I don't know where
Red
that,
tape.
but yeah, red tape. But on that we had Dinos, we were flying some big lights. We had 18Ks, 12Ks, huge lights running tons of power. So it was like that was like my first experience, working electric on a Hollywood project. And so it was like to go from that back down to um film school lighting was just so like, whoa. Being on basically a union show and then just jumping back. So I yeah, because it was kind of, so I'd say from the get-go, me working lighting, yeah, in LA. I always worked with the big toys. But yeah, but for it took a while for me to, as a gaffer, to be able to get on those sets and be able to call for those lights.
What was your process of being able to get on those bigger sets? Like what were your early steps to really make it in and get your foot in the
Networking,
door?
man. Networking, 100%. That is the name of the game out here. It's all about who you know. It really is. Because I mean, I owe so many friends so many drinks and lunches and dinners just for all the sets I was able to get on, just from just knowing people. And I mean, going to that school, really, I mean, that's where it really paid off. I mean, it was uh was the networking. I think that that's how I was able to get on that show. That's how I was able to get on a lot of my sets, was the Columbia connection. So I'd say yeah, networking was a big reason. And then once you get a rapport with people and stuff like that,
Hmm.
then then they'll keep calling you back, and you hope anyways. And you jump around. You meet all these different people. You jump on one set, then you meet a bunch of people from there, and then you might hear from one of those guys, and then you're working with them for a few months, and then you jump back with the people that you were working with before, and then, so it's just like it's kind of all over the place, especially in non-union. You're kind of just all over. So
So it gets to a point where you're basically just working with a bunch of friends on different
yeah,
projects.
exactly. And that's the best part is, it's you guys immediately, it's just like you show up, unless, you're like filling in for somebody and it's like a new crew or whatever. But for the most part, you're working with friends, and you get to hang out with your friends, and it's fun. And
Yeah.
you guys have you have such a rapport that, it's, unless production's dragging their feet or something, you're really, it's really a smooth process, so.
So does it get to the point where it's just full synergy pretty much, and like DP's like, hey, I need this, and then you guys are like, oh, cool, done, and then he just set
Yeah,
everything
I mean,
up.
you hope it's that, occasionally you'll get green people on, or you'll get something that throws a kink into the plans. But yeah, I mean, that's why you work with the people you work with, because it's like, okay, I know this guy's going to come in and give me 110, or just be good to work with, just be a good personality, because it's a blend of talent plus personality. Somebody could be really good at their job but be a complete asshole. Sorry, pardon my French, jerk.
It's okay.
Be a
We'll
very
bleep it later.
yeah. um, so yeah, so you want to make sure that it's people you enjoy being with. So yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're on set for like 12 hours at a time, 16 hours
Oh,
even,
you hope.
At that point, you're seeing them more than your family sometimes. And
Yeah.
if it
Oh,
sucks working with them, it's a draggy set, right?
it is. Oh man, especially when you're
Does that
going.
ever happen to you? Like where you've worked with somebody where it just was difficult?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I had so many stories.
Please
It's tough.
share.
Oh gosh, without naming names and stuff. Well, yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
keep the names behind the curtains, but
yeah,
he or
I mean, well,
she's.
you get these weird people sometimes that just have these personalities and these egos, and they're just like they're divas about, they might be like gear owners or something like that, and they're just really big divas about how they run things, how they, it's just like you're just kind of like, all right, here we go. It's like, we get it. You own gear. You're cool. But you know, um, but for the most part, I mean, I work with a lot of very enjoyable people. It's like
Mhm.
it's very rare when somebody comes around that's like a jerk and like a not a cool person. And when they do, you never work with them again. It's kind of that's
How do
kind
you
of
go about handling yourself, or like you see the crew handling when working with somebody that's just not quite on the same page and a little difficult to work with?
oh yeah, you gotta kind of be blunt. Unfortunately, very it's very uh it's very touch and go. Like, you have to work with them, and you have to, it's not all it's yeah, yeah, it's not easy. Sometimes you have to let them go and you have to replace them,
Hmm.
honestly. If it gets that way, I mean, I've been on shoots where, guys have had to be replaced because they were either just drinking on set, or something really bad, and or they were just late all the time.
Hmm.
That's a big thing. So yeah, you kind of have to or they just weren't getting it. They just were either too green and not getting it. So but usually, we're fair to a degree. It's, I say, where you're more at odds, you're less at odds with your crew, you're more at odds with production or something like that. That's where it can get touch and go. And you really have to, especially as a DP, you have to be a people pleaser, but also, be, stick to your guns. So it's a bit of it's very touch and go. So yeah, I've had projects where, I've where our set treatment is very unfair. We're not provided just normal means to exist, or rates are super low, but and then they're dragging their feet on stuff like crafty stuff, like OT is a huge thing. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times we've gotten in discussions and arguments with people, and that's just the non-union world. I mean, they're just, I know that stuff can happen in union world, but it's not as common. It's very it's definitely more non, because there you can actually, you have the unions backing you, so you can call them. And I mean, you can, and people call the people on non-union projects all the time, but like, it's, it's a little bit more of the Wild West on non-union. So you really have to, be good. You have to become a good litigator when you're in charge, when you're a crew head, and you have to be able to fight for your crew and be fair and not get yourself kicked off, essentially. So, which I've seen people. So yeah, I've literally been in, like, not shouting matches with production, but like matches where I'm just like, this is not right, this has got to change, and they change, and they listen to you. But I and then I ended up just hanging out with the rest of the show. Like, I ended up going to production, we're friends, and they've got me work since. So it's like, but you have to establish that where you stand, and you like, I'm not going to be taken advantage of, and I'm going to make sure my crew is taken care of, and that's what it's going to be. And people respect that type of leadership, and they might not always give you what you want fully, but they might work with you, if they're a reasonable person. I mean, if you're on a music video, good luck, but
Right, especially non-union.
yeah, especially non-union. Yeah, so yeah.
So yeah, that's really cool, because then it sounds like once you can establish the parameters of the type of environment you want, you can just let production know. They'll try and meet you halfway, most, if not like all the time. So then that way
Yeah,
everybody can work it
you want
through.
everyone to be friends. A happy set is
Yeah.
is a much better set to be on, and you want everyone to be cordial, and especially if you're on long shows, if you're on features or whatever you're in, or TV series, you're there with those people for weeks and weeks. It's like, you don't want to be on bad terms with those. I've been on those shows where it's just like, all right, this is like the third or fourth crew that's come in because everyone's left, or it's hopped off for other projects, or whatever. So it's like, you want to establish that from the get-go. I think that makes a better experience, on set. So yeah, because yeah, I mean, you are there for long hours, and you are there for a long time, so it's yeah, you want that.
So on those sets, do you actually already have equipment, like your own personal kit yet, or are you renting most of the time still, or how's that happening for you?
um well, I was one of those guys that I just never really wanted to be a gear owner. I respect. I have a lot of friends that are, and those guys are killing it, and they're doing well. So I respect that hustle. But I just never wanted to own anything. I had too many friends that own stuff already, so I
So you
wanted
didn't
to
have
help them
to.
out. Yeah, I just yeah, call it lazy, call it whatever. I don't even know, but yeah, I just didn't want to spend my money that way. I work as a voice
It's not
actor,
lazy. It's
so.
just I mean, from where I can see, like it's a whole nother ball game to own equipment too, and to just be able to come on set, call up a friend, and
Yeah, and I work as a voice actor as well. That's actually kind
Mhm.
of what I'm sort of transitioning into. That's sort of the end all goal for me at some point, is to be that. It's not that I don't love working in cinematography or anything like that, or being a gaffer. It's just, you find other passions. That's the other thing about working in this industry is, you never know where you're going to end up. You might think you're doing one thing when you start out, and you end up going a different route. So I've invested a lot in that. But I like helping my friends out. I like, I just rented for my buddies the other day. We did I shoot a multicam interview series with Anthony Padilla, who used to work at Smosh, or was the Smosh creator. And he now does an interview series on YouTube, and I've been shooting for him for the last almost 2 years. So
oh
uh,
wow.
yeah, so I like to hook up the friends. We had a huge live event last year that we shot that was multicam, and I had, I had easy rigs, I had a full lighting package, I had I had multiple camera operators, everything, and was running a big live event. And so it was nice to hook the homies up and be able to work with a few of the people that I've known over the years and be able to kind of pay it back and, kind of use their stuff. And so, I just, I guess if, I was, really, really wanting to do it full time, for the rest of my life, I would definitely invest in gear because I think it's smart to do. You just got to be careful because, it's like you have to maintain that stuff. That's why I always encourage people to sub rent and, to if you do buy gear, put it in a rental house, put it on a gear owner's truck, do stuff like that, because then at least you make it back.
So like kind of almost like sub renting your stuff out in a way.
Yeah, I think that's a way I would definitely go. If I did end up purchasing gear, it would be
I'm hearing a lot of folks are actually doing that these days. So it's almost
yeah.
like you don't have to buy your own gear anymore. It's just like everybody kind of contributes to the usual team you work with and have your own ecosystem and support, pretty much, right?
Yeah, and that stems from the union system because working at Panavision, I saw that a lot of ACs and operators and DPs had all their gear. Just like I worked at the Woodland Hills location, and that's the mothership. And they had all their stuff stationed. They had film cameras, everything from film cameras to follow focuses, wireless follow focus to lenses to everything, and cameras, and they would just leave them there. They had their own bins. I have friends that have sky panels, Asteras, all kinds of gear on several different trucks. So then they do that, and a lot of the union gaffers, everything like that, have their own like full trucks and stuff. Like I worked with Yo Williams gaffer, and he has like yeah we had his like fall off truck, and that was like a full 10 ton. Its whole belly was filled with baits, cams, like everything. Like it was nuts. And then he had like a 24K just chilling on there, and his other trucks were over in Europe because they were over in Europe shooting. So it was like
Whoa.
it was just yeah, it was disgusting what some of these guys accumulate just on features. I mean, these guys make tons of money on those big blockbuster features, and so they just are able to just like, all right, well, invest in gear. Like I'm a union gaffer I met years ago. I mean, he just invested in truss, and he's not a grip, but I mean, he just rents out truss to all the grip guys, and makes tons and tons of like thousands of dollars on his rentals. Um,
And trust lasts forever too.
Yeah, trust
next
lasts
to
forever.
next to zero maintenance.
Yeah, like I was like, dang, all right, it's just like, he's like, oh, I'm going with my daughter to, Bali or something, just chilling. Yeah, we bounce back and forth from Hawaii all the time. Like I'm just like that's
Off
the
of
other
that trust
off of the
money.
trust money. Like I mean, he owns lights too, but off of like trust and all this, like I was like, dude, what? And yeah, not only that, he works on big projects too, so he makes
Hmm.
makes big makes big money there. But
Yeah.
I don't know how he's doing now with COVID, but but
That's the story we're getting from everyone. Like, well, actually, recently I'm starting to hear that a lot of folks are starting to get back to work. Thank God, finally. But
uh, yeah, it seems like it's picking up again.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of
has it affected you drastically at all, or?
not so much. We stayed pretty COVID compliant, and it's bare bones. It's like I set up 2 cameras, and we have our lighting set up stay the same. So we basically built this set, and then we've just it's pretty much just locked off from there. So and then it's just me, the creator Anthony, and then his production coordinator, and that's pretty much it. I mean, we've done one or two live interviews, I think, since this started, and that we had our COVID compliance officer there, our producer, and so other than that, I mean, yeah, we've just been playing it safe, but that's been pretty steady. Otherwise, I was just hopping on and off unemployment and stuff like that. So, um,
How has like the whole COVID situation changed your experience being on set?
uh, it makes it a little less desirable to be on set just because of all
It's
the
not
other
as fun.
you have to go on. Yeah, and I mean it takes away the freedom of it almost a little bit. I mean, I respect what they're doing. I mean, they need to be safe about it, and just because I know there's been outbreaks, and or not outbreaks, but I know people that have tested positive, and that have it's or know people that know people that have tested positive and stuff, and so it's good that they have all this set up. It's just kind of unfortunate that we have to do this. It's kind of like
Yeah.
it just takes the fun out of being on set almost a little bit. So, for what I've been hearing, it's been fine. Everyone's been kind of just doing it, and I think eventually we'll get into a good groove where it'll feel normal. And it's a little less close.
Yeah. I remember Joanna was mentioning that like you've worked with her in the past on a project too, right?
Yeah.
How is that? How did you guys get connected? And what was the type of project you did?
My boy Nick Musco, shout out, dude. um, uh, I gaffed a project for my buddy Nick. He went to AFI. I think he's SOC and Union. He's really cool. He's good at his job. He's awesome. Um, and he called me up to gaff a commercial, and he said we were working with FilmGear on the commercial, and Joe was producing it, and so went in and did 2 days of that, and we got to work with um all the LED lights that you guys have had added on there, and one or two of the HMIs, and so it was really nice to work because I love film gear lighting. I really do. I've mostly only worked with the HMIs over the years, and anytime and mostly gear owners had them. So it was anytime we were on those shoots, it was like, oh, film gear lighting, nice. Because mostly we see Airy. That's what we see a lot of. That's Airy's kind of the workhorse in the industry. They're kind of
Hmm.
everywhere. They set the precedent. So it was really nice to see. It's really nice to see that stuff. So it was cool to play around with it and get really close, and kind of she was kind of explaining, sort of going over what um what the new lights were doing, and I was able to like work with them and really get to know them, and just I really liked the Fresnels. I was really, really drawn to the Fresnels, and
The LED for nails?
the LED Fresnels. Yeah. And so I ended up talking Anthony into, because we were using sort of a battered tungsten 2K light as our key source for a long time, because we were renting from one of the stages, Zio, in Burbank, because they have a partnership with YouTube, and so a lot of YouTube clients shoot there and stuff. Like I think the Real Bros of Simi Valley, they do work there, and a couple other uh, uh, YouTube guys are there. So they kind of, that's where we get our gear most of the time. Well, Anthony's trying to expand and branch out and try and build up uh, his own collection of gear, so that we don't have to keep renting. And so the minute he was sort of down with getting new lights, I was like, oh, I gotta call Joe, because my buddy Ryan and I, we went in, and we saw Joe. We did a whole demonstration at FilmGear last year. We went in. This was a couple months after that shoot,
Hmm.
and because I kept in touch with Joe, and we were like, okay, yeah, let's go check these out in person and stuff. So it was nice to see. There was a couple more lights there that I hadn't seen on set. So it was nice to see the panels up close. And so yeah. So basically, I wanted to establish that relationship, before she had talked to me about being an ambassador, and getting gear, and I was like, well, I've had a great experience with these. I want my friends to as well. So I was like, all right, Anthony, let's do this, and he was down. And so we've been using that for the last couple of weeks, and it's great. It works awesome, and it's just
Oh,
like,
that's dope.
and it's a lot cooler. Which we shoot in Highland Park, and we're in a house, and it gets hot
Oh,
some
I
days.
bet.
It's not as hot as the valley.
Especially
But
especially these past couple of days. Or
oh man,
oh my god.
yeah, the tapes fall off the walls. So let me tell you, when we had that tungsten unit in there, it was like boiling. You've been, I'm sure you've been on sets where it's been all tungsten everything, and it's just like
Yeah.
it's a hot box. You cannot. It's one thing I don't miss about. I love tungsten. I'll always be a supporter of it because it's that color temperature. I don't think will ever be able to be fully replicated as close as LED gets. I just don't think it'll be ever that. But man, do I not miss those full
It's
tungsten
like the
shoots.
trade-off.
Yeah, oh, it's just yeah. But, I like the bicolor aspect of this light, and and it's really precise, and the brightness is even punchier than the 2K we had, which is very important, especially when with exposure and everything. So I was really pleased with getting that.
and, and not having to run like a dimmer because it's LED. Dimmer is pretty much like in the
Yeah.
system.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's yeah. Yeah, the hand squeezers are yeah. I don't know. We're seeing less and less of those now, which is interesting. It's such a
Yeah.
lighting is such a different world now than what it was. I mean, even though we still use a lot of the same things, it's like it's more likely you'll have a board op on set. It's more likely you'll have even somebody just running Luminaire, DMX or something like that. You'll see way more LEDs. It's different, but they're at a better place now. I mean, I don't know how we did the whole Kino thing for so long. I mean, that was just even that owner of it. I think it was at Cinegura's NAB. He basically was like, yeah, that really wasn't our best. It's just like, why was that industry standard for so long? But I just love what they're doing with that technology, and it's so fun to see, and it's cool to see FilmGear in there with them, with Mole, with Light Gear, with Airy.
Have you had the chance to use their new LED panels, like the Auroras and stuff?
I mean, I played around with it when I came in to
Mhm.
FilmGear and tested it out, but not on set really.
Oh, well, now
Uh,
that you're an ambassador, you should definitely hit up Joe
yeah,
next time you
I
need something like that.
I know. Yeah, I would love to bring those on a shoot and play with them and everything. That would be fun.
How is the transition going from running gels to like these days practically not needing them? Or do you still consider like gels a main necessity still with the RGB stuff being available?
They've gotten extremely close with saturation levels and everything, and with how they are in LED sources now. But every now and I mean a gel just the way the look and everything. I think it's still I still will be a necessity, but you definitely see less of it for sure. Um, I Yeah, but I mean, yeah, like I said, as long as you're still using tungsten and HMI, you're gonna still need gels for sure. So yeah, I don't think they're quite gone yet, but I mean, yeah, you definitely it's only a matter of time, I think, which it's sad a little, but I don't know. It's hard to say because we thought film was going to be dead, and then now there's still a lot of projects shooting on film, so it's like
Like some people like bringing back that old look.
they're getting so close though. I mean, it's harder and harder to tell these days. Um, but but yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, I hope that world never goes away because I was very blessed. Like I said, back in school, I was very blessed to be able to work with film and appreciate that medium, and being able to work with those lights, and that's things that created some of the best looking films of all time, and television series and stuff like that.
Having a lot of experience using that stuff made it a lot easier for you to use the more newer versions of them, because like the newer
Oh
stuff these days just seems like they took different aspects of things and then consolidated into like one product or one piece of equipment.
yeah.
And
Yeah, absolutely. I think it gives you a discipline. I mean, coming from film to digital, we had that discipline of of shooting. So we were able to apply it to digital, whereas people that just start off with digital have this. It's a very laissez-faire perspective on it. It's very run and gun, very But we had this like it basically it gave us the foundation to be able to jump into that, and I think we made our projects better because we came from that era. Um,
Like having the good solid
the
fundamentals.
good solid fundamentals, because it still applies. Everything still applies. I mean, there's just people. I still use a light meter, even though a lot of people don't anymore, because you can you can color grade, you can
Fix it in post.
fix it in post, and well, the way cameras have now, they have, I don't know, you just have more control now, so you don't technically need, you have your histogram and all that, all these curves and everything that you can sort of pinpoint what your exposure needs to be at. So you technically don't need that stuff. I still like to use it though, because it still does work, and it still does transition. And in fact, the lights they have now are better than, or more accurate to what you can meter, versus years prior with like fluorescence and stuff like that, and you're going off general readings and stuff. So with color temperature readings and stuff like that.
The other day I was setting up the cameras, and I don't have like a ton of experience on the camera,
Mm-hmm.
and I was telling my friend like, oh, so like I need to find this filter for post, because there's like a certain look I want for like the color grade. And he's like, what do you
The
mean? You
LUTs.
can just do it all in the camera. I'm like, what?
I feel like it's still good to light and and look at the raw image to know where your highlights are, where your shadows are, where your midtones. You still want to approach it as a photographer, cinematographer, a visual person. But yeah, I mean, you can have your colorist build you a LUT, and then you can apply that, and that way you send it back to Video Village or whatever, and so the client's looking at what it will be roughly. I mean, you should always, I mean, I'm a firm believer that the DP needs to be in that whole process. When you start the online process, from wrap to the online process, the DP needs to be there, because things might switch, things might change. You might want to crush your blacks a little bit more in an image. You might want to adjust your color temperature. You might want to, there's so many different things you
That's
need to
really
be present.
interesting. I've never thought of like pretty much having that LUT prep so that they can see that the potential final product
Yeah,
during the shoot versus during post, because
yeah,
it really helps them like figure out the mood and determine if it needs to be adjusted.
if you have a solid prep, and you have you're really really have a good productive pre-pro, then I don't see why that's not a possibility.
Have you ever had that? Because you're pretty much a DP now. Like, is that something that you'd
Yeah,
prefer to be able to have these days?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think having a good strategy going in, but also allowing for the accidents, and the special
Like,
findings.
kind of like you set up all your lighting, your camera, and then suddenly the sun comes in at the right angle, and you're like,
Yeah,
whoa.
yeah. I mean, that can mostly be applied to like narrative projects. I mean, with a
Mhm.
corporate video, you're not gonna. I mean, you might, if you have like C camera or B camera, you might go steal some awesome sunsets or something, some cool shot to splice in, but that'll be more straightforward. But when it comes to narrative, yeah, go ham, man.
So do a lot more corporate stuff, especially these days?
It's a balance. It's been a balance, since I've been out here. I'll have a series of just corporate gigs, and then I'll have a series of just narrative projects, and then and then you'll get like a music video or two. It's kind of
Especially in LA, there's everybody's trying to be a musician out here.
yeah, it's weird. It's such a weird journey. Everyone has a different journey. That's the thing about LA, is because it's like it's really impossible to fail unless you are just bad at your job, or you really don't try. I mean, that's the only way you can fail. That's what I was told when I first moved out here, is it's really impossible to fail out here. But you will have like a unique journey that'll only be something that you go through.
With you so far, where do you see your film career heading towards, or like at least your goals for this next couple of years?
Well, when I moved out here, it really was to be a shooter. It really was to be a
Mhm.
cinematographer. I mean, I love that department, and I love that role. I love being that eye to the director and being that visual compass. And I've loved being on set. I've loved being a gaffer. I've loved being an electrician. I've loved being in camera department as an operator. That's been a lot of fun. I found a passion in voiceover, and so that's kind of that was something I started almost about the same time as I did this. But I did passive for so long, and then I found that I was investing more of my money and time into that career than this. And I work with a lot of people that, a lot of guys that are electric scripts, that are writers, directors, producers on the side, that are doing these other things, that aren't just doing it because they want to. They're doing it as a side hustle to do these other projects and stuff. And I think that's something that, you know, uh, people shouldn't be afraid to be honest about, because a lot of times, people are worried that, like, oh, the work will go away or whatever. I still get hit up,
That's,
even though
that's
I've told everyone that I'm a voiceover artist now. I still get hit up for sets, and I still love going on set. It's not
like
like,
diversify
yeah,
your skill sets a bit.
yeah, if you want to shoot, like, seriously, like, I mean, it's like, oh, well, I need to make, it's like, you kind of have to be uncomfortable, and you have to be okay with being uncomfortable, because that's the only way you're ever going to attain those goals, is by being uncomfortable. And so, I mean, that's what I would say to people. That's what I do say to people, is do what you want to do out here. You can do this in any city. You can be an electric, you can be a grip, you can be you can do that in any city, literally. You might not work the same level you do here, but if that's not, if you want to be a gaffer, if you want to, if you want to be a crew head, if you want to be a cinematographer, or or director, do it, like, make it happen.
You only miss what you don't try, right?
Yeah, exactly. What's that Wayne Gretzky quote? 100, you don't make 100 shots, or. um
Yeah,
yeah.
that's really cool that you like really diversified, especially in because over the years I've noticed like the film industry goes through weird phases. Like everybody's working a ton of jobs, busy beyond belief, and then suddenly like the writer strike happens, and then everyone's stuck. So having that extra kind of like fallback so that you can still weather out the storm in a way sounds like it's a really good advice for a lot of people.
That's kind of what it's like, and so, like, I did theater. I've done lighting since I was in junior high. I did theater. I did theatrical lighting, and event lighting, through high school. In college, I worked those jobs, but I take acting classes throughout that time. And I was an actor, when I was younger, as a kid. So when that trend, and then I found myself hanging out with the actors a lot on set and stuff, and always talking with them, and always, so it was just like, it was little things like that that sort of started to, like, be like, maybe give this a try.
Well, Zach, I definitely learned a ton from you today. I really enjoyed your discussion. Like, you're actually the first person that actually made an excellent point about being able to diversify your skill sets just in case anything can happen, or over time,
Yeah.
you like to try different things, and that's really amazing. And I think this is like a good point to call a conclusion on this episode. And I really appreciate your time, and I had a great talk with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun, and yeah,
Do you
looking
have any
forward to
shout
it.
outs or plugs?
Shout out plugs. Check me out at Zack Zeidman VO on Instagram, and see what I'm up to. That's mostly what I'm on.
All right, fantastic, Zach. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. And I hope you have
thank
a
you.
wonderful weekend.
You too. Have a good one. Peace.
Peace.